Welcome back to the Mad Bork Show. Today, I want to talk about the movie Falling Down. It's a movie that came out in 1993, and it was about a guy who completely snapped when he lost his job. And it's actually a really relevant movie when you're looking at what is happening nowadays. And it does feel like there are some striking similarities, and a couple of people I like listening to and watching started talking about this movie. So I decided it'd be a pretty good idea to compare the numbers from the early 90s and look at how they match up with some of the economic data of today. Cool. So let's dive in. All right. So let's start with the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate peaked around 7.8% at that time. Around 1.6 million people lost their jobs, and there were a lot of manufacturing jobs impacted, and some of these good-paying jobs were gone forever. What we're looking at nowadays is a 4.1% unemployment rate, which might look good on paper. However, we all know that the 4.1% doesn't reflect reality. And a lot of people have multiple jobs. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of people who cannot afford groceries. So it would be unwise for politicians to say on both sides that everything is fine when it's actually not. In order to understand sort of like what we're dealing with today specifically, we have to talk about the gig economy. So 36% of workers, 59 million people, are a part of the gig economy in the United States. 68% of these people are doing gig work because one job is not enough for them, right? And 80% of them cannot handle a $1,000 emergency. Now, the crazy thing is that the gig economy was forced on people because living expenses are so crazy high that you are forced to do more work. However, the big problem there is that, let's say you have a full-time job, and on top of that, you have to do something else, right? Maybe that's how you operate. Or maybe you have multiple freelance positions, or you're doing more gig work. The problem there is you're literally overclocking your body. You are putting a lot of effort in, and then it's not secure at all, right? If you're an independent contractor, you can get fired at any time. Maybe you're not needed anymore. You're not going to be given hours, whatever the case is. So it's not sustainable, stable work. So what else? CEO pay. 1991, CEOs were paid 59 times more than the average worker, which is already pretty high, right? But in 2025, 344 times more, right? That's a 483% increase. And it's absolutely insane because I don't feel that CEOs have become that much more productive or they're contributing that much more to a company's success. So I don't really feel that an increase that high is deserved. However, since a lot of times at corporations, the board decides how much a CEO is getting paid and also who the CEO is, unfortunately, they have full control, and we have zero say in like how much these people are getting paid, right? And then we also have to talk about corporate profits, right? Because you would say, well, I want to understand like why I'm not getting paid more. Well, one of the reasons why you're not getting paid more is that corporate profits doubled, which is fine. Like on paper, the fact that that happened, economically speaking, that's good, right? When these companies are reporting numbers, they can say, listen, we double profits. That's amazing. Yeah, but at what cost? It came at the cost of your wage. You were not getting paid. And you're not getting paid because, well, everything is optimized for profits. But then when that happens to such an extent that it comes at the cost of you being able to afford bread, and rent, that's where it gets out of control, in my opinion. You may ask, what happened to that money? So it was not given to me. Who got it? What happened to it? Well, $2.4 trillion were spent on stock buybacks, which is 54% of earnings, and 37% to dividends. Now, what that ultimately means is that more money lands in shareholders' pockets, not yours. So it's not like the money disappeared, but the people at the top rigged the game and they're not being fair anymore. And that money, the money that they got from the stock buybacks and the dividends, right? It's not going back to you, because this class has a tendency to hoard the money and they're sitting on it, right? And when you actually would need that to get by, you're not going to get it. Okay, so let's talk about housing. In 1991, the median home cost 2.6 times the median income. And in 2025, the median home costs 6 times the median income. What we're looking at here is a real price increase of 84% after inflation. So that's crazy. So you think housing is bad? Let's talk about renting. So if you were making minimum wage back at that time in 1991, it would have cost you 40 hours per week to afford rent. In 2025, if you're making minimum wage in 2025, you would need to work 106 hours per week to afford rent. That's virtually impossible. So you have to live with someone for sure, right? What that means is that you have to work 2.65 full-time jobs in order to afford the rent. And I mean, I don't know, man. It doesn't feel right at all. It feels so screwed up. Because if so much of your money has to go to rent, I mean, and what about everything else? And yeah, that's crazy. So in terms of who can buy a house in 1991, 68% of Americans could afford homes, right? But in 2024, only 43% can. That's a major drop as well. All right. Now, let's compare grocery prices and let's have a look at sort of the differences between the two eras. So milk price went up by 46%, bread 46%, ground beef up by 59%, egg 252%, and what $100 bought in 1990, now it costs $227. So yeah, those are major increases. Now let's compare the minimum wage. So in 1991, the minimum wage was $4.25. If we're talking about today's money, that is $8.85. In 2024, it was $7.25. Now, what that means is that in 1991, you were making more, even if you were only paid minimum wage, compared to what we're looking at today, which is insane. What this means is 42% of purchasing power was lost since 1968, right? And that's a huge issue because the American economy is based on consumption, right? When people cannot consume, when they cannot buy things, that will ultimately have a bad impact on the economy, right? People who have a tremendous amount of wealth, they tend to hoard their money, right? They spend it less compared to a middle-class person or maybe a working-class person. People tend to spend their money more, and that creates an economic boost. When that doesn't happen, that is when we're having issues. Not because, well, the rich doesn't deserve it. No. The problem is that if money is not being put in the pockets of the lower and middle class, that will ultimately suck the economy dry, because at the end of the day, when people stop spending, right, that will create huge issues. And then if we're pricing people out of the economy entirely, that will ultimately create social unrest, no matter how you're looking at it. All right. So unions also disappeared, which is a huge problem, right? In 1983, the union participation was 20%. In 2024, it dropped down to 9.9. So that's also not great at all, because unions can actually help workers vouch for decent wages. And when union participation is really, really low, what that ultimately means is that you're really at the mercy of your employer. And then a lot of times what happens is that they're, unfortunately, employers are not really having the backs of employees anymore. And that is causing a lot of issues. We also have to talk about the education trap, right? In 1991, public college cost around $2,000 per year, whereas in 2024, it costs $11,000. Now, that's a 448% increase. Again, these are major increases. And let's not even talk about the $1.7 trillion student loan debt, right? So there's a lot of pressure on society in terms of everything, in terms of educational debt, in terms of housing, in terms of basic food items. And if you add all these things up, it's basically a bubble that is about to burst. We're just basically waiting for it to happen. Okay, so why do I feel that falling down hits different? Well, think about it. It's literally a movie that was made more than 30 years ago, right? And I feel there really shouldn't be a movie that was made 30 years ago that reflects the economic reality of today. No matter whether we have ups and downs, sure, every country and every historical period has its ups and downs. It's normal, right? However, it doesn't really feel like this is just a regular down and it will pick up again, right? The economic recession in the early 90s only lasted for a couple of years, and then it recovered. Unfortunately, it feels like something permanent happened. Maybe it happened after COVID. I do feel that COVID had a lot to do with it. And it started to restructure society in a fundamental way that is, it's really not good for anyone. As I said before, the moment it gets so bad that people cannot afford anything at all whatsoever, like it's getting to that point already. But the moment it gets to a point where it gets so bad that people are going to be out on the street, like going out on the street like every day, hopefully it's not going to happen. But if it's going to hit an extreme, then there's going to be unrest. There's going to be more protests, more violence, right? And we don't want that. So why don't we deal with this in maybe now, maybe earlier, before it gets even worse? Even Michael Douglas, the actor who portrayed the character, the protagonist of the movie, even he said that in 40 years, the stock market increased 5,000% and real wages increased only 14%. And I mean, the problem is that, and this is going to be a good one. So the problem is, in order to become an Elon Musk, a Steve Jobs, and not everyone wants to start a business, right? So that's the other thing. To be able to make as much money as they did, you have to be extremely lucky, right? You have to be born in a certain place at the right time, right? You need to meet the right people. You need to be given the education and social skills required to make that happen. And here's the thing, not everyone can do that. There's a reason why there's only so many people out there who made millions of dollars. Even if you want to do it, maybe you're not going to be able to do it because life happens, right? Maybe your business idea fails, or maybe you want to do something else, right? So, and then the problem is, when everything depends on you being rich in today's society, when in reality, not everyone wants to be a business owner, right? Not everyone wants to, be an entrepreneur, and that sort of thing, right? Some people just want a regular job, and I think that's okay, right? We need more of those than business owners and entrepreneurs, because someone needs to work for those people, right? So if they don't have employees, the companies cannot grow. And the problem nowadays is that if everyone is an entrepreneur, if everyone is a business owner, that basically reduces the pool of viable people who can work for those businesses, because maybe the person would be better off as a entrepreneur, meaning a person who has entrepreneurial tendencies, but that person works for the company. But then in order for those people to be employed, you need to give them a clear career path. And unfortunately, that doesn't really happen nowadays. And that is exactly why those people are out and about. They're part of the gig economy and whatsoever. All right. So if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Please comment as well. It's going to really help me out, because it's going to help the algorithm understand that you guys enjoy this video. And also, once you're done with that, please subscribe. And if you want more videos like this, please stick around, and I'll talk to you soon.